Hello, research students. Dr. Yang here. Today we are going to talk about descriptive data analysis. We have 3 PowerPoints today. They are all relatively short, but they've got some really important information. So you may have to stop and rewind and kind of revisit to make sure that you've got all the info that you need. But before we actually talk about any analysis or any statistics, we need to talk about getting our data in good shape so that we can run an analysis on it. So we talk about data and data analysis, and we're going to talk about this right now from a quantitative perspective, because this is often what people sort of envision, or often what people think of when they envision research and they think about statistics. And so this is going to be our first little tiptoe into actual statistics. And then we are going to build into this, and we're going to eventually end up running our own analyses and thinking about what it means to understand the story that data tells us. So where do we begin? Okay, you've done a project, you've collected your data, and now the reality is you're looking at a really big Excel file. You're looking at an SPSS file, which is honestly the same thing as an Excel file. And it's just going to be a whole lot of information. It's going to feel really overwhelming. And so I'm going to talk to you about a process that we call coding. And coding is something that we do in both qualitative and quantitative research. We're going to talk about coding today solely in the context of quantitative research. It means something fundamentally when we talk about qualitative research. So today we're going to talk about quantitative coding. And what this is a process of taking answers, taking words, information, and turning it into a number. Okay? So I want you to think back when we talked about survey design, and we talked about those different levels of measurement. We talked about, do you want to put something on a Likert scale where you have a range of responses from something like strongly agree, neither agree, nor disagree, or strongly disagree? Do you have just categories, white, black, Latinx, something to that effect? And really what we're looking at is every single response on an item, on a questionnaire, on a survey, on an observation list. Every single piece of information that we have needs to be turned into a number. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here is not so much the number that you assign to each word, but the level of measurement that we have and how we are going to make sense of that information. So one of the simplest ways is to look at something like nominal data, okay? So nominal data is anytime we have a binary. We have a yes or no. We have a black, a white. We have agree, disagree, anything like that. So when we talk about nominal and we only have 2 responses, typically we're either going to use a 0 and a 1, or we're going to use a 1 and a 2. Personally, I often use 1 and 2. Because 0 can get a little confusing if you have folks who don't enter a response. But again, the numbers aren't as important, okay? As long as you know what choice you made and why, you will still be able to do the same types of analyses on the back end, okay? So when we have a binary, you just want to pick 2 numbers, 0 and 1, 1 and 2. Technically you could pick any number. You could pick 35 and 36. It doesn't matter. But really what we're looking at is a way to turn those bucket responses into a number on a spreadsheet. The other way that we can talk about it is if we have sort of ordinal data where we have chunks of information that don't carry any sort of difference. Remember when we talked about ratio and interval, there was a meaningful difference between those things. But when we talk about career choices, for example, maybe we left this open-ended, okay? Maybe we gave a survey out to everybody in Rock Hill and everyone wrote in their profession. And we go through all of those responses and we start to see some trends, okay? We could say anybody who identifies as an educator, their response gets coded as a 1. Anybody who put any sort of job related to a medical professional, maybe those folks get a 2. Folks who work in business, they might get a 3. So on and so forth. Again, those numbers aren't important. What's important is that you have a rationale and a meaning behind why you pick the numbers that you pick. And so literally what this is going to look like is a giant Excel file where you've got participants going across the horizontal, okay? And maybe the first column is, do you live in Rock Hill? Yes, no. Maybe the second column is, what is your occupation? Okay? And so we would just start to enter in these numbers and fill out our spreadsheet that we are going to use for data analysis. Another set of questions that we might have are those Likert style or Likert style questions like we talked about. So maybe the third question is, you know, there's a whole section of questions that says, read this and tell me how much you agree with this statement. Okay, so maybe the first question is, I believe that Rock Hill is an excellent place to live. Whatever their response was, you put a number in. Maybe the next question is, I believe that Rock Hill is an affordable city to live in. Okay, so we would be building up this giant Excel file where we are turning in the words into numbers. Okay, because those numbers are what we are going to run statistical analysis on so that we can begin to identify mathematical relationships in our data. Now, when we talk about data analysis, we have to pay attention to data cleaning, okay? And what this is that we are taking steps to ensure the accuracy and the validity of our data. So first things first, you want to visually inspect your data. And to do this is going to sound really wonky, but hear me out. I will sort of like relax my eyes a little bit, like I'm looking at one of those magic eye picture things, you know, where you have to like see through it to see the picture. I'll do that and I'll scroll through my sheet looking for anomalies, right? So if I know that all of my responses are coded between 0 and 7, right? Like maybe every single question existed on a continuum between 0 and 7. I'm scrolling and looking for cells that have no numbers. I'm looking for cells that have duplicate numbers, right? Maybe one of them was accidentally coded as 66 because there was a typo, something like that. Now, visually inspecting for errors, you can do that with a fine-tooth comb. You can do it on a broad level, but you want to make sure you do it. You also have to make sure that you are doing some sort of data entry process to keep your data safe. So you're uploading it into an analysis program, something like SPSS, which is a statistical software, a cloud, a Google Drive, somewhere that you're not going to lose the data, and that you are very careful in saving your files. You want to name them well, okay? A really good habit to get in is putting the date that you last modified the file. You're going to end up having a lot of files that way, but if you go back and you make a mistake, it's easier to revert to an earlier edition of the file if you do that. And then there's a lot of choices, a lot of decision points that we have to make when we talk about cleaning our data to get it ready for analysis and sort of preparing our data. But the most important thing I want you to take away from all of this is that if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Okay, so you have to really take the time to make sure that what you are doing is quality, is meaningful, and makes sense. So I realize that some of you are visual learners and you're going to need to put your hands on it. So I'm going to show you a short little video after this looking at an actual Excel file so you can sort of visualize what some of these things were that I was talking about. But that's the end of this video. So thanks for your time and attention, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.